Good afternoon and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, is my good friend, Jim Stamm. How you doing, brother?
Gary, what's going on, buddy?
Well, not baseball, that's for damn sure.
This is true.
I mean, should we do a countdown of the lockout, or do we just go ahead and jump right into bitching about it? I think that's what we should probably do.
Yeah, maybe we'll start putting up like a board in the back like OSHA does, accident-free day, and we'll just set it up behind us about counting the lockout.
But before we really start diving into the Pirates stuff today, let's do a little personal show business, shall we? Jim and I were lucky enough to meet with Mike and Tiffany over at North Shore Tavern right across from PNC Park, and we were able to talk with them a little bit and get secured doing a live show there. And we think it'd be a great time if everybody came down. It's going to be on January 22nd, 2 o'clock. Before or after, Jim and I are going to be around having fun. So show up and have some fun. Talk baseball with us, the history of the Pirates. There's certainly a ton to cover there. And, man, we're really looking forward to this and hope it goes well for everybody involved. It's a great place filled with history, and Jim can speak to this a little bit. We had a great time talking to Mike. Man, is he full of knowledge.
Yeah, first of all, Pittsburgh born and bred. Just getting to talk to him a little bit about, he really does know the history of the game and got to see quite a few cool things with the Pirates before we came along, Gary. So, yeah. And to anybody out there that's never seen the North Shore Tavern down there right across from PNC, man, he's really gone all out to pull off a pretty cool vibe down there. And it's Pirates everywhere and some really cool artwork, memorabilia. It's top to bottom Pittsburgh, and it's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, so if you've got good stories of games you've watched and things you've seen and memories you have, perfect time to come down and share them with us and, get on the show. I mean, jump right next to us and jump on. And we're also going to be live on YouTube at the same time. So if you can't make it, you can still participate. But really encourage as many people as possible to come down. It's just a great time, and I think we're going to have a good time that day.
Yeah, and for anybody that thinks this is easy, well, they can come down and they can try to show us how easy it is, and we'll see. We'll just see about that.
Yeah, we've had more than a few freeze in the headlights a little bit, huh? When we start talking. So, I mean, not Douglas though. Douglas was, besides some audio technical difficulties, man, he came to play last week. He did. His content was excellent. So, looking forward to having him on again sometime.
He was really good.
Hey, but I'll tell you what, let's dive in and start talking a little bit of baseball, shall we? I think the lockout is something that we've talked about a lot. It's going on. Any thoughts on where we are right now? I think we're on radio silence because everyone's going to be quiet until after the holidays, which probably makes you wonder why wait so long to start actually negotiating, right?
Nothing puts the fear in people like impending deadlines. Think about back to college when you have a paper due and you're about 3 weeks out. Man, I got plenty of time to finish that thing. And, 2 weeks, then maybe a week. Next thing you know, you're pulling all-nighters before trying to get it done. So I just think that's where they're at. Holidays are coming up. Everyone knows what needs done. They're just not going to blink first at this point.
I mean, I think when you're this far out from missing even spring stuff, it's really easy to look at the list of problems and go, we don't agree, and just walk away. It's really easy at this point to have a 7-minute meeting right before an impending lockout and just go, good. I mean, that's the level that you knew it was coming from both sides. 7
Sure.
minutes is all they invested on the last day before it to actually try to come to some kind of an agreement. That's how close it was. Things like this that are coming for as long as they have been, they don't change on a dime. I mean, at this point, this whole thing to me hinges on really because the players' list of demands is way bigger than the owners, if you ask me. So that's never going to line up. It's really going to come down to when the players decide what they can knock off their list, and then they'll really start talking.
Yeah, like you said, no one's going to blink right now. Everybody knows what the issues are. Um, the players have a ton of, I don't know if you want to call them requests, demands, whatever you want to say, and they'll slot those appropriately, when they sit down, and there'll be things that they definitely want and things that they're willing to throw away. And,
Yeah.
that's just the nature of negotiations, right?
It is. Sadly, it's not the nature of adult negotiations because most adult negotiations you're actually looking to come to some kind of an agreement. I don't believe that there has been a period of time since we knew this was coming. I'd say back in 2018-ish when you really started to sense that this was going to be the year. I don't think they've had an adult conversation since then. I think it's been trying to win points in the media, trying to score points
Oh,
against the other
sure.
guy. I haven't seen anybody really put forward anything that really made a lot of sense for both sides. And if neither one's going to try to do that, you might as well be negotiating Middle East peace. It's just not going to
It's
happen.
Yeah, I mean, for sports, it's about pretty comparable, isn't it, with between owners and players, and that's really been
Yeah,
the history of this game. Um, and how interesting is it? I don't know how many people even realize this. There is still, I think it's like a $200 million lawsuit right now that the players have against owners right now from
yeah.
from the COVID situation and all the stuff that happened with that is still pending litigation.
And
So
so much of that is caused by Manfred just running his mouth because that lawsuit has no legs to stand on whatsoever if
it,
Rod Manfred
if
isn't stupid enough to open his mouth and say that they were always planning on playing a 60-game season.
yeah,
Those words right there are what could lose them that lawsuit. And I'll tell you what, if I'm the owners, that's a fireable offense if they lose that lawsuit. Straight up.
yeah, I mean, this wasn't even something we planned on talking about, but you're right. I mean, he made some pretty fatal mistakes there. And it's just interesting that they're going to sit down and try to negotiate something with
Yeah.
that thing still hanging over everyone's head. And that's quite a sweetener, or, well, I don't know, a toxic elixir, or whatever you want to call it, to what's going on now. This bad blood has been there a long time. And yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It's plausible, though, and I never really thought about this until just now. This is the beauty of doing these shows and not rehearsing what we're going to talk about because, yeah, we didn't plan to bring that up, but when you really think about it, I just talked about the laundry list that the players have of requests, and the owners don't really have much of one. I would bet dropping that lawsuit's a pretty big request. So that might be something that actually gets the players something they want.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's a feather in someone's cap, right? So
Gotta be, yeah.
certainly you could, while it's separate on paper, it's certainly not. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so hey, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and when we come back, let's dive in a little bit on really the two sides of this conversation and why I don't think it's appropriate really to pick a side. I just want the fans to win. And we'll move forward from there.
All right.
All right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. So we left you off basically talking about the lockout a little bit. We presented a little bit of what both sides are dealing with, and I'm not going to go into the tick mark of requests that everybody has, but I did want to discuss something with you, Jim, because we love to see on social media people giving their opinions on things, and this subject in particular is so polarizing.
Isn't it?
It is. People are either all in for the players or all in for the owners, and to me, man, I just want the fans to win. And to me, neither of these sides can truly claim victory without the fans suffering. So to me, I want like compromise. I think that ultimately brings the game back to where it needs to be. I think if the owners can compromise and say, "Yeah, we've kind of been cheating you a little bit," and the players can kind of say, "Yeah, we kind of get that, this is a little out of whack and you guys have to do something to control it." And they can just kind of come together a little bit. It sounds so much easier than it actually is. But if they can just come together a little bit, then the fans win. And that's really, to me, what it should be about. Unfortunately, nobody in the game has that. Nobody wants that.
You're right, man. It's so polarizing. And look, you know, we're always on social media. So, I mean, there are a lot of things people take sides on, and it gets, pretty festive. I don't know if that's the right word you want to use, maybe this time of year, but
Yeah, it gets
man,
like Steeler game in the stands festive. There you go.
there we go. And man, this is polarizing. People really do love to just they pick their side, and they
Yeah.
are all about the players or all about ownership. And I just remember like I mean, because when the lockout first happened, you get that social media vomiting of everybody's
Yeah.
opinion right away, and
People that
people
weren't
are,
really paying attention and act like it literally just smacked them like a sledgehammer in the back of the head. Yeah.
yeah. And I remember tweeting out something to the effect of like, everybody's hating the ownership, or the other side, everyone's hating, the players. And I'm just like, can't I just hate everyone right now with baseball the way it is? I just want to hate everybody. Is that okay? Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So, yeah, like I don't hate either side or love the other side. I just hate what it's doing to the game and the fans. That's what I hate. So, you know,
Yeah, you just get tired of listening to the bickering and the constant one-upsmanship that always has to take place, and the always trying to position themselves in the media to be made out to be hard done by, and all this stuff. Like the players, they're complaining right now about what the young athletes are being paid, but they've systematically given that stuff away over the years in order to make sure that things like Max Scherzer getting paid 43 million a year can happen. I mean, that's the exchange, and I'm sorry. You can say that it's great that he makes that. It is wonderful. I mean, we live in a capitalist society. I'm happy he's able to make whatever he can make, and good for him. His skill set says he deserves that. They can afford it. Good. But I just think, like, from a game standpoint, you've given away so much for these young players. Don't come crying to me now that they're not making money because they're complaining to the union. I mean, I know why they're upset. They should be. They've gotten screwed. They have for years and years and years. And the players are just as guilty of that as the owners.
yeah, and I think look, what it really comes down to is everyone thinks that the interesting thing about it is anytime you bring up supporting like a cap or anything, it's seen as favoring the owners. And I don't know that it's necessarily that easy of a correlation in my
Oh, not
mind.
at all. No.
You're talking about um, competitive balance. You're talking about the overall health of the game. You're talking about, okay, great. you're putting a cap on things. Well, other leagues have shown that revenues still grow. The players are not hurt overall by it. So it's just interesting to me is the phrase that always I always or the name I always hear on social media is if you like the owners and you support ownership, you're a bootlicker. So that one always cracks me up because it's such a funny description anyway. But I mean that's how those people feel is you're limiting salaries and you're licking the boots of ownership. And I just think, do you like other sports?
Yeah.
Do you have a vested interest in other sports? Do you have favorite teams? Are you glad when those teams win? Well, there's a reason for that. You wouldn't have any of that without what we're talking about. So I don't know how people uh, get around that aspect of it and then go right to that in only baseball. How does that work?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's something that I've never been able to really understand fully. I
And
understand
it,
some people. It's the way they feel about union versus ownership situations outside of sports that they just can't justify that with the stance they've taken there. So they have to come back and make sure that they match up basically when it comes to baseball. But I don't know. Sports is different. Sports
it,
is a different animal. It's an all encompassing business where everything needs to kind of flow together. You need to work together a little bit to make sure that everything's cool.
yeah,
The NFL has had labor strife as well. I mean, this was just a few years ago. The Steelers didn't even vote to ratify the CBA as a whole.
yep.
So
Yeah, I mean, the
it's
irony of
not
it
like they're
is,
always all happy.
no, I mean, that's why they're called concessions, right? I mean,
Right.
both sides have to do it. And, the irony of it is from a player standpoint, and you would think this would resonate with people, is a lot of the quote unquote little guys in baseball, they're the ones that are getting really kind of screwed, and now some of that's their own doing and they've approved that and gotten themselves into that. Some of it happened before they came along, but I mean, you would think that that would resonate with people. Some is, well, if you don't change things, it's Max Kranick. I'm sorry, Max Scherzer. Boy,
Max Kranich.
was that a Freudian slip? Those two guys will never, ever, ever be mentioned in the same breath, except just when I did it. But it's the Max Scherzers of the world that have the uh, big corner office and almost management at this point. They're the ones getting the money. It's not any of the little guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting, so you would think that would resonate with people, excuse me, but it doesn't seem to. So I don't
Well,
know.
it's the mentality of a pro athlete. Like, there's no pro athlete that thinks they don't have it in them to be Tom Brady, or thinks they have it in them to be Max Scherzer, or
Or
they.
Kranick, either
Well,
one.
but yeah, but they think they're a tweak away from being Miguel Cabrera. They don't, they're not thinking like that they'll never reach that plateau and be in that situation. And when they
Yeah.
get there, they want to be able to get whatever they can get. I guess when it comes to a salary cap, though, I think what the other leagues have shown us is that doesn't mean you're not going to get what you want. I mean, you're still going to get a
Oh,
great amount
yeah.
of money. It's just like a starting pitcher is always going to be just as valuable as a starting quarterback. Think about that. Like, it didn't hurt Patrick Mahomes. I mean, like, it may hurt the team they can actually construct around him, but it certainly didn't hurt him. He got paid, right?
Right.
And they're probably having a little bit of buyer's remorse with all the interceptions this year. But hey,
It's neither here
let's
nor
just leave
there.
it there. Point is, he got paid, and the point is, he would still get paid in baseball. Baseball's gonna
And yeah,
always pay.
and guess what? The guys underneath him and those types, they're still getting paid too. It pushed their market too. So I
Yeah.
mean, look, I just think people have to get away from. I mean, if you're gonna try to treat this as simply a normal business in some corporation, I don't think we're ever going to speak the same language when people
Yeah,
do that.
because it's
So,
just
if,
not the same thing. This isn't the
yes,
Kellogg's plant. This is something completely different.
right. And so if that's going to be your mindset from the beginning, and hey, look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I think you're going to have trouble um, relating to people that see it in a far different light, and that, I mean, how far, Gary? How far down the road do you want to take it? Okay, so look, does that mean we shouldn't have drafts for these leagues? Hey,
I
you're
mean, they're
you're
already
you're
starting to
limiting.
propose things like that, though,
Yeah,
because
you're limiting where players can go. This team could pay more to this guy, so why are we even drafting? The reason
the
being is
draft,
because,
honestly, you just saw compared to the slave trade by Colin Kaepernick the other day. I
yeah,
mean,
so
like, and honestly, and I'm not even getting into the politics of that. I'm just saying, like, that's not an uncommon perception that the trade that it's like a slave trade being drafted someplace, and I guess I get that, but it's
in
again, it's a
some
sports league. This isn't like it's not like you're graduating college and IBM's calling you up saying you have to come work here and here's what you get paid. You know,
in
it's
in
not the
some
same thing.
in some perfect world where no other factors exist and you don't have competitive balance things that come into play and things of that nature, that can hurt or help the overall, um, profitability or enjoyment of the game. Absolutely, go out and crush everybody if you're IBM, if you're Microsoft, if whatever. I mean, hey, that's what happens a lot in capitalism. So I just look at it like, boy, I think we really need to get out of the mindset of this is just some run of the mill. This ain't McDonald's, you know?
Yeah, I think they need to start looking at it more as we, the owners and the players, are MLB. It's not
That's fair.
MLB versus the players union. It should be we are MLB. And our competition is the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, and NASCAR, and soccer that's starting to gain and nip on their heels. And they need to start realizing that they have a product that they need to come together and sell. And if that product is not good, in other words, if a Tuesday night the best game on TV is the Pirates and the Brewers, you've done something well.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to wait for the times when the Yankees and Red Sox play or the Dodgers and Giants are playing. It should be really any matchup is pretty good. And sure, there's going to be bad teams sometimes, but that's what we ultimately need to be trying to get to. And you can talk about how it gets paid and who gets what and how it gets distributed, but at the core, that should be the goal. Getting to the point where you have competitive games, any market in the entire country has a shot at winning the whole thing. And the other side of it, the part we don't like to talk about a whole lot, is they have mechanisms built into the current CBA for spending revenue sharing, and they're not enforcing them.
Yeah.
And all they're doing
Well,
is
let's
asking
let's
these teams to define where they're spending their money. But
let's
they
talk
didn't
about
define
that.
for them where they should be spending it.
Let's talk about that then, because that's really the crux of it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even if you don't ever institute a quote unquote cap, it's what are these teams doing with the money that's being shared? You didn't put any parameters in place.
Yeah.
And guys that are like Bob Nutting are going to say, okay, great, thanks. We're working really hard at all levels of operations. And
Well,
what
here's
can
the
you say?
problem. Here's the problem, though, because, we've already discussed the players are really hung up on that word, salary cap,
Hmm.
and salary cap system, and anything that smells like a salary cap, even what the players or the owners initially put forward, that $180 million cap and that $100 million floor, um, which I ultimately don't think would really fix the game. I think it might improve some things. But here's the thing. with the revenue sharing, where I just discussed like that they haven't outlined exactly where that money has to go. They can't. You want to know why? If they said that you have to use that revenue sharing for payroll, like let's say they said 80% of it has to go to payroll. Guess what you've just instituted? A salary floor,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So in theory, the players would say no to that. In
In
theory,
in
because it's a
theory,
salary floor. Now, if they keep that word out of there and they just say, "Oh, it's 80% of revenue sharing," and they can prove what that number is every year, and that's the number that teams have to dedicate to payroll minimally, it'll accomplish the same thing, and maybe they'll get around the we don't want to vote for anything that smells like a salary cap thing. But I mean, let's be honest, we're just being silly here. That's what it
yeah,
is.
it's semantics. I mean, call it a threshold, call whatever you want to, whatever word you want to
Right.
come up with. I guess my question would be is, you know, if they do that, and look, the, who knows what's going to happen, and this is something that we're just speculating on. But if they do that, how much appreciably better does that make it for teams like the Pirates? Maybe a little. I don't know that I'm getting super pumped about it. Do I like would I like the fact that it would force teams to spend some money? Yeah. But I don't know that if it's that way across the board and now you're forcing other teams to do it, does that
All
really
you're
help the
doing is
Pirates?
creating a new zero.
Yeah, yeah. Does that really help the Pirates? I don't know.
No,
Maybe
no,
maybe
it
it does
doesn't.
if you spend super wisely and
I mean, let me try as best I can to just explain why a salary cap works in the other sports. Because you have a ceiling, and everybody has that ceiling. Nobody can exceed that ceiling. There's special circumstances where somebody can go on long term disability and you can technically bring in more and pay more. There's things like that that happen, but for the most part, it's a pretty firm cap. Like the NBA has something where you can pay one guy way more. He's like a franchise guy or something. Fine. You can do things like that. The floor is no more than 25 to 30 million less. That's what creates competitive balance because they're all within that range
yeah,
and they're all able to reach that cap and they're all very capable of not going below that floor. The younger players have to be paid more in order to make that work. So
yeah.
you have to do some things to change the way the game's played and paid. But that's what makes it work. It's that the spread is so small. You want to have a spread of 80 million, all you're going to do is get players like Kevin Newman paid 8 million a year. That's really what's going to happen. You're not going to get somebody like Max Scherzer paid less. He'll still get his money. It's just not going to change things that much as far as the game goes. And Max Scherzer's still not going to come to Pittsburgh because they're not going to come close to hitting that cap.
Only
That's
if
really the point.
he'll only come to Pittsburgh if he's pitching. And
And
it
none of
was
that's possible without the aggressive revenue sharing that goes around in the background. The
yeah,
NFL has an easy job of it because the NFL has 17 games per team and all the playoff, and it's all national TV. And they split it,
yeah.
and it's done, and boom, and nobody has a local TV contract that's way bigger than someone else. And they split all the merchandising, they split everything because they see themselves as one giant entity. The NFL, the players, the owners, everybody involved is the NFL, all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
Players get more money every year. It's the owners get more money every year. It's just
And
it's a system that works.
yeah, and you touched on something that's really, really important for people to understand. And that's the NFL's the perfect example of it is when there is the salary cap set in the NFL, the margin that they have to operate in is very, very small compared to other sports and other things, especially baseball, where there is none, even theoretically, if there was one that they've just proposed, and whatever they want to call it. It's just like you said, and I don't know the numbers, and I wish I had them, but yeah, there's only a certain gap that NFL teams can fall in. And like, yeah, like
Yeah,
right now, I think the Steelers have 10, 11, 12 million dollars in
11 right
unused,
now.
yeah, unused money for the salary cap, but they can't just decide not to spend another $50 million.
No,
They
matter of
have
fact,
to
they get to
reach,
roll that over next year.
yeah, so they
So
have to reach a certain amount. And so so what that turns into in baseball is okay, great, they do this, you know, half attempt at the the salary, not cap but threshold at 180, and then a floor of 100, and so now you like you said, you're talking about an $80 million gap.
yeah,
Well, what's that
marginally
really?
better.
Yeah, I mean, what's that really going to do? You've got to bring those things together.
It makes it marginally better, and
Yeah,
that's really the gist of it. And people want to worry about tanking because they feel like teams are tanking for top draft picks, and I don't deny that that takes place. I don't know that it's tanking as much as cause and effect for trading a bunch of players for prospects. You're going to stink for a while, so it kind of just happens naturally. But regardless, one of the things they'd like to see is the draft system changed to a lottery. They want some kind of a structure there, not unlike the NHL has. Prevents teams from doing exactly what the Penguins did to get Mario. And I can understand that to a degree, but I also think, man, that's just one more thing that makes an already very difficult job that much harder for a team that just can't pay as much. So to me,
yeah,
they have
and
some real challenges, and a lot of it is about really just thinking through these processes. And I don't understand how they can't just look across the aisle and see another team, another league just doing it right and killing it. It could be
yeah,
done so easily.
I've always thought it would be interesting, and neither side would probably dare do this, but I would love to see some kind of firm or research group or something be able to come in and sit down as almost like in a mediation type situation and come up with what needs to be done. And I would just love to see that from both sides and see what they would come up with. And just like I said, I don't think either side would dare do it because they're afraid, well, what would come of it? But it would
Yeah,
just be
because
fascinating to me.
they'd both lose and the fans would win,
Yeah, and it would just be,
as we started with.
and they wouldn't be in control, whether
Exactly.
it's perceived or not. So they're never going to do that. But I always thought it would be fascinating because I really do think if you just got someone in there who was impartial and could figure it out, and that's their job, they could do it. And man, it would be great. But that'll never happen either. So
So that's the lockout for right now. Once we start having some news, I think Jim and I'll have some opinions on the different things that are coming out, because really, even everything we mentioned, technically, it's all off the table right this second.
yeah,
So we really kind of need to start seeing things come out a little bit as far as the ideas being pushed forward. As of right now, I don't even think the designated hitter is a sure thing. So I think we have a long way to go in this process, and buckle up because it's going to
yeah,
be a ride.
it
So
is.
the only other thing in the news, really, Jim, before we get into our last segment where we're actually going to talk baseball again, is Bob Nutting sold Seven
He's
Springs.
sold. He's sold. Big
He
news.
sold Seven Springs to the Vail Group, which probably doesn't really mean too much of anything. He made a decent profit on it. This is a company that comes in and runs things all the time. They can conglomerate everything together as far as services and paperwork go, and they just do a better job of running things like this. And it's a good investment for other people, and he probably made a hefty profit. So good for him, I guess.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, not the sale people wanted to hear about, right?
no, and full disclosure, I've never been, so I don't have any attachment or really knowledge of that whole thing with Seven Springs and whatnot. So for me, it's easy to crack a joke about it. First of all, I've always said this about the Pirates, uh, or nutting or anything related, is that you've got to be able to laugh about some things. And I think people did have a pretty good time with it because nutting and the word sell has been a dream of many, many
Yes.
Pittsburgh fan.
And there's the saddest thing really is that a whole lot of Pirate fans out there are going to have to probably hire some new joke writers because I don't know what they're going to say he's spending the money on now. I guess he held on to the golf courses so they can say tee boxes and holes, but
Yeah.
um, or they'll
Well,
say the only holes Bob Nutting addresses is over at his golf course, right? They're not going to talk about first base.
they'll just go back to the smog gifts of him sitting on the change and the coins. So
Things like
um,
that. Yeah.
there's always something to go to. I think it is. It does say something though that like you know clearly it was a joke and obviously he wasn't selling the Pirates, but look at the difference between when the Penguins news came up and the sale of that, and people were worried and legitimately concerned, and there was angst with it,
Yep.
and whether you agree with that, it was a good move or not, but that tells you the connection people have with that team and for the city and whatnot.
Yeah, and he's a beloved
And
figure too. I mean,
right,
like
beloved,
no,
in
nobody
the
wanted to see Mario not be part of the Penguins anymore, and
yeah,
fortunately, that's not going to be the case. But yeah, much different tone when you hear Bob Nutting selling something. And
sure,
I will say this though, and I'm not going to get crazy here and just and pretend that something is coming on the horizon or anything, but. And no, I don't think the CBA would affect Bob Nutting's willingness to sell the team or not. One way or another, they're not. There is no scenario where they will come out of this where owners become poor.
no,
So let's not worry about that. But I do think one of his statements in the past is, basically, we don't sell things, we acquire things and hold on to them. Well, little crack in the armor there, huh? He just sold something. So maybe the right price could get it done, huh? I mean, he's already stands to make a hefty profit based on what he paid for the Pirates versus what it's worth right now.
this is true.
Yeah, 1.3 billion is nothing to sneeze at. It's hard to turn
No,
something like that down if somebody comes along and offers it, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, and hey, and what someone says 1 year, 5 years later, maybe doesn't apply. So we'll just see how it plays out. And I really doubt any of these valuations of these franchises are going down. Um, History has shown that it's as good of a
It's a good
real
investment.
estate. Yeah, I
Right.
mean it's better than real estate. So you just never know. But yeah, you're right. I mean things can change.
Great. I have no desire to sell my car. Come offer me 20 grand, you can have it. You know what I mean? So who knows what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, Jim. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's actually talk some baseball because when they do come out of this lockout, Bucs got some things they got to get to work on. All right, Jim, we're back. Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. And man, it feels good to talk some baseball. It's hard. It's hard right now to talk some baseball because you don't know when it's coming back. So it's very difficult to get into it. But through the prism of knowing that this is happening, I also know that time is going to be short, sweet, and precious when they come back. And this team cannot afford to sit around and wait. They've got some things they've got to do. We're going to talk about the starting rotation today because I think it's really interesting. First, Ben Cherington said he wants to bring in another starter, which I found curious. I think it's already pretty congested, actually. And somehow they're going to have to strike a balance between playing some of the young guys and letting them get experience and bringing in some veterans to potentially make this team a little better. I think they started doing that with Quintana, and I think they're hoping that Thompson does that, right?
Yep.
But let's say the starting rotation is Quintana, Thompson, Wilson, just for giggles, let's say Keller and Brubaker. Then you've got youngsters coming up like Roanzi and Yahure and Kranick and Cody Bolton and Peters and Crow. And how do you get innings for all these guys? I mean, like, sure, some of them can start in AAA and some of them could probably stay there for a while. And eventually you're gonna realize that Quintana's not good enough and move on from him or trade him at the deadline or whatever. They'll make room over time. But how do you make that call? I'm a little curious about that because you bring in another pitcher and add that to the mix, which I truly think they should. Who goes? Who sits? How do you work this? How do you actually get innings for all these guys, Jim?
Yeah, I mean the beauty of it is, or the like you said, it's something the Pirates, whether the CBA gets fixed tomorrow or happens in on time for spring training or whatever, these are the issues and the scenarios that the Pirates have to work through, right? So
Right.
we can talk about it today, just the same as minus maybe one piece, like you said, maybe a starter. Hopefully that's what they're talking about, like Sherrington said, that we're still going to have the same conversation. So it's great to be able to jump into it now. But yeah, there's so many guys and options, and it's funny, just looking through things. My starting five right now is Wilson, Quintana, Thompson, Keller, and Brubaker in no particular
Yeah.
order, by the
We're
way.
in lockstep on that, which
Yeah.
we didn't pre-plan.
No, no. As a matter of fact, I was sitting here listening to you say your five, and I'm like, damn it, Gary. Here we go again, thinking similarly. But yeah, but then there are other guys. So, and I think you can count on things sorting themselves out naturally, whether it's performance. Hey, health's going to play a big part in this.
Sure.
You've got guys that can easily start in the minors, some that should start in the minors, like Contreras. I
Max
think you can.
Kranick.
Kranick is another one. You've got some guys like Dylan Peters that maybe you can see in a few roles, right? Maybe he's a starter, maybe he's a spot starter, and maybe he's long relief. So, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. I will say, to me, it looks a little better than what we were going to be dealing with last year. And let's be honest, let's see what comes along here, and let's see who they are able to sign when that time comes, and if they are able to sign anybody, because that will change the
Yeah.
dynamic quite a bit.
Because at a starting point, yeah, I'm actually feeling better than I did last year as far as where they
Yeah, a
are.
little bit, right?
Yeah. Last year they bring in Trevor Cahill. Listen, I'm not as up on Quintana as a lot of people are. I mean, some people really want to just pretend the last 2 years didn't happen or give him the benefit of doubt that injury caused it all and the COVID year and things like that. To me, Quintana has a proven track record of underwhelming since he was very young. When he was very young, he was very good. I mean, since going to the Cubs, I'm sorry, he stunk. As a Pirates fan, he was the one pitcher that I was like, I saw like on the lineup card, and I was like, all right, we got a shot tonight. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not super high on Quintana. I give him about as good a chance to do okay as I did Trevor Cahill last year.
Yeah,
So
I think
if he
that's
does
fair.
well, great. I don't think he's Tyler Anderson level. I just don't. To be fair, I didn't think Tyler Anderson was Tyler Anderson level last year when they signed
Sure.
him. So I'm saying, let's say Thompson is our Tyler Anderson right now. I think
Hmm.
he's got a good shot of coming in here and at least doing similar to what he did last year and holding down a spot. I think Wilson's got a great chance to take a jump this year. Atlanta never gave him the time consistently at the major league level to really, really settle in, take charge. The Pirates gave him that last year. They basically threw him in and said, "Hey, for the rest of the way here until your arm falls off, you're the ace, fool." And
Yeah.
they threw him out there, and he ate it up. You could just tell he ate it up. You could see it on his face that he loved it. Mitch Keller, prove it year. Period. Now, how long do they give him to prove it? And what do they do with him when he doesn't? That's the biggest question mark in there. Because to me, Brubaker, I think he'll come back looking every bit like he did early in the season last year, if not a little better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him.
I do think you're going to see him in that starting rotation. I do think he will look pretty decent coming out of spring. And I still think they want him to be a starter. So I don't think they want to have to go that route with him. So that opportunity is going to be there. Yeah. So, and maybe it's good that, like, as we're talking, Mitch Keller's name starts getting brought up a little less, just from the standpoint of maybe that's what he needs too. I mean, just he can go. He's always going to get a little attention, but maybe just not as much as before,
In other
and he
words, we
can
don't
kind of.
need him to be a star or a rotation savior.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
now I think that we have to all adjust our expectations on that anyway.
Let me say
So,
this though, if he is, let's say something clicks with that kid this year.
mhm.
And I hate the what if game. Like but let's say
Well,
that
we're
that some
we're Pirate fans, Gary. We have to do what ifs.
right, right, but as Craig and I talk a lot about baseball, we both tend to kind of look more towards the floor of a guy's development as opposed to the ceiling.
Hmm.
So I guess I tend to undervalue a lot of the players, thinking like the lowest common denominator is what I expect, and anything else is gravy. So let's just say Mitch Keller figures something out this off season. Let's say like he really that what he was showing there in that last month clicked, and he
Hmm.
comes back next year. There's no hiccups. He's ready to go. And he actually turns into a piece. This whole thing is further ahead than they thought. Right then and there on that one player. Brubaker, I think you hope he does well and continues to do well, but nothing's hinging on him, right?
No,
Bryce Wilson, you have for like 4 more years. You want to make sure Bryce Wilson does well. Thompson, you want to make sure does well. But Quintana and Keller are X factors to me. Quintana either dictates whether you get a good piece back for him at the trade deadline,
hmm,
or Mitch Keller dictates whether you have a surprise piece, or if now you absolutely have to have Brennan Malone and Quinn Priester both work out and Burrows. I think it just changes the math drastically if Mitch Keller works out.
yeah, I do think you can. I think we're along the same lines there, is where you do think of um, Keller and Quintana for different reasons um, being X factors.
Yeah.
And it throws a lot of things out of whack in season and long term if they both bomb or aren't what we think they could be, or things don't get back on track. So, well, let's talk. Let's just mention guys like Yahuree and
Yeah.
Oviedo at this point, because I think those are two guys that we're going to hear their names called quite a bit and talked about. Where are you at with those two?
Oviedo, I don't expect to hear his name all year.
Okay.
Mostly because I think a case could be made that he's really not even ready for AAA. I felt like his development was so far behind that I'd almost feel inclined to keep him in AA. The fact that they kept him protected on the 40 man tells me they don't agree with me. But to me, if he was as far along as starting in AAA next year, well, why the hell didn't you use him more last year in the bullpen? Because
Yeah,
I,
mixed signals there, right?
that doesn't make any sense to me. I felt like you don't go from hiding a guy feeling like he can't even get you 3 throwaway outs in a blowout game to now he's going to be starting in AAA and be a factor. He's not going to be a factor this year. Think of the guys he'd have to jump over. Like everybody we just named, he'd have to jump over. Plus whoever they sign if they sign somebody. You'd have to jump over all those guys to get a shot at starting in the majors this year. I don't see it. I think he's got a full year in AAA minimum under his belt before we start considering him again. Yahure, most developed off-speed stuff in the system, if you ask me. Um, I think it really comes down to fastball control with him, and I'd probably lean almost that he's profiling more as a bullpen guy to me.
I was curious to get your take on him because I have cooled on him uh, a
I like
little
him. I think
bit.
he'll get a shot. I think ultimately he's going to land in the bullpen. But
Yeah, and um, and I don't know that it's necessarily even been performance-wise that makes me cool on him. I just, you're talking about a guy that's his fastball is maybe going to be in the 92 point whatever range.
yeah,
He's
92 to 94.
yeah, and sometimes it's 91. I mean, that's fine. Hey, we've seen a lot of veterans get by with less than that, but they're veterans and they know how to pitch. Um, I just really have a hard time endorsing that,
He
seeing it
has
as
shown
something.
that ability though to know how to place his off-speed stuff, and I think that's what made him so exciting last year. Is he
Yeah,
really looked like he had a good handle on where they were going. The problem was he dropped um, a couple miles per hour off his fastball as the year got on. And you can say that was injury or even just fatigue from pitching all year. But regardless, it happened. And when that happened and he stopped being able to place it, he became an ineffective pitcher. That's really all
yeah,
there is to it. And let's be blunt, he got passed by Rowanzi. Contreras is now the hot ticket down there. And
sure.
to be blunt, that's something we haven't really discussed.
Yeah,
Who goes when Contreras is ready? Because I could see Contreras looking ready in spring. And I know we love to talk about manipulating time and everything, but let's be honest here. Even without manipulating time, you're going to want a young pitcher to show it in AAA just a little bit, right? I mean, like that's hard jump to go from AA to the majors. I'd like to
yeah.
see him get a few games under his belt.
Well, what would be the need to have him starting right away um, in the rotation in the majors? I mean, I as I sit here and I try to think of the benefit of that, it's so minimal.
Right out of spring, I don't think there is one.
Yeah,
But let's say like you get into, let's pretend we have a normal season because I'm gonna err on that side until proven otherwise. But let's say like you get to like May 15th and Bryce Wilson looks like he's got it. Zach Thompson's everything you traded for. Yeah, that ERA wasn't fake. That FIP was real. The dude is actually a good pitcher.
hmm
Brubaker looks all right. Um, Keller's got his head on screwed on straight. He's hitting 95 on the gun. He's placing his fastball. He's getting outs efficiently. And Quintana stinks. Let's just say. I think, is that too early to pull the trigger on bringing up a stud? Like because if you got those other four pitchers rolling, you can sit here and say like it doesn't matter, but if you've got those other four pitchers rolling, you're going to want to augment it. Now, if four of the five stink, yeah, why bother? Keep the service time, right?
Hmm.
So to me, it's almost like you need a few of them to be doing well almost to force the issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I wanted to, I could make an argument both ways. I think April and May is so hard to really figure out what you've got sometimes,
Sure.
with your pitching, and so I'd want to give it April and May to see how that, with the weather changing, whatever, and see how guys start responding to, every 5 days out there and whatnot. But then I'm in June,
Right.
and I don't, and then so then I'm thinking, well, why not just wait till after the All-Star break at that point?
Right.
So
Why not
that
wait till the trade deadline? Why not? Yeah, right.
so I can get behind that too, where I'm like, well, what would be the rush at that point? And then you could kind of monitor his innings maybe a little better. Like you said, give him that foundation in AAA, and just really, really make sure. He seems like a guy who's got a pretty good mentality about things and a demeanor. I don't know you have to worry about that with him.
Well, he's not alone either. We talked about him as a young guy that could push his way up, and I think Will Crow showed some things last year that I think they might be interested in seeing again. I personally feel he's another guy that's suited well for the bullpen. I think he
Yeah,
slots right into what they hoped Cody Ponce would be last year. So, Will Crow, he may find himself in the bullpen. He's another guy. I think 2, 3 times through an order is a little too much for him, but 2, 3 innings probably not. He might be a perfect guy to just slot in there and kind of like be a long man or a swing man out of the bullpen. And,
yeah.
an occasional spot starter if you need it. Somebody
I
that
was
I
just
think
gonna.
will make it right out of spring, but that's
I was
why.
just. I was just gonna say that definitely a guy you could give a spot start to. I just smirk because he's not the most exciting guy in in the world to watch pitch.
Yeah.
I refer to him as Prince Valium because he just kind of puts you to sleep, for all you for all you Spaceballs fans out there. He's the Prince Valium of starting pitchers.
He
So
really
yeah,
is.
but you need guys like that, and you know, he
But
could
he's another
definitely.
guy too. You put him in the pen, and you're not asking him to stretch himself out. Not that he did often, but you put him in the bullpen. He's no longer trying to pretend he's going to last for 6, 7 innings. He probably gets a couple more miles per hour on his fastball.
Yeah,
He probably cuts back on one of those cursory pitches towards the back end of his repertoire that doesn't work most of the time, and he maybe turns into a Chris Stratton type over time. That's what you hope.
sure,
So, Will Crow, he's not a flush away guy. They got control over him for a while. This is how bullpen arms happen, by the way. So let's not assume you're drafting bullpen arms most of the time. That's not the
sure,
goal. A lot of the time, your starters are going to wind up being who fills those roles. And Dylan Peters, you were just talking about, is another guy that could potentially fill a role out of that bullpen. So they have a lot of options, I guess. We've always talked about the need for arms, and I guess what I'm saying is I'm starting to feel it a little bit. It's getting a little closer, and this isn't even the exciting batch, minus
yeah,
Contreras.
yeah. This is the precursor to that. So we're still going to be doing a little bit of smoke and mirrors this
But it'd
year.
be nice if you can make do with this rotation, and it turns into something. You've got control of almost everybody here,
Hmm.
minus Quintana. You've got control of all these guys. If two, three of them, four of them, even like out of that long list we read off, including the minor leaguers, pans out and becomes the bridge to that next gap where you are allowing a Quinn Priester to come up and not have to be the savior, because he's stepping into a rotation that's already got 3-4 guys that are doing pretty well, or Michael Burrows, or Malone, or somebody else.
Right.
If they can come up as they're ready, as opposed to being waited for, like we got signs at the airport holding up their names, like, come on, get over here. This mound is for you. I think you start to see the vision a little bit more. And maybe you see a little bit less knee-jerk moves to try to acquire people close to the league. I think maybe you start to believe in your system a little bit more if it looks like we're starting to get some production out of who's here.
Yeah, I think obviously if you can get 2 or 3 guys to kind of stabilize things wherever they are in the rotation, then you can go out, wait for some of these other guys to develop,
Yeah.
maybe supplement somebody through free agency at that point. I think that's the ideal situation.
It's the rose-colored glasses version too. I mean, let's not be crazy here.
Sure.
It's probably not going to play out that way. But to me, everything they do from here on out is about finding answers, filling holes, and filling out this roster. If I come out of who pitches this year with 2 or 3 pitchers that I feel pretty good about going into next year with, I take that as a win. And that's a lot of
Yeah.
pitchers to mow through to not come out of it with 2 or 3 I feel pretty good about.
Well, yeah, and I think part of the litmus test too is when we can get to the point where we're in a season and we're not having to look at a guy that's on the mound that shouldn't be in the major leagues, whether
Right.
that's a starter, reliever, mop-up guy, whatever. Because let's be honest,
We
we've
saw some
seen
of that, yeah.
we've seen too much of that, and we're
Yes.
watching guys that don't belong in the major leagues. And is that harsh? Yeah, but
It's
I
true.
mean, it was painfully obvious, right?
It's
So
true. Truth is truth, brother.
yeah,
I mean,
so
that's why I keep stressing they need to be focusing on getting bullpen arms as opposed to starters, because I think there's enough starters that I'm pretty comfortable rolling through them. I want to see what they can do at this point.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Again, not expecting them all to be winners, but I want to see what we got. I don't want to just give Miguel Yajure 2-3 starts this year and yeah, he stinks. He's not, I
right.
want to see what he can do. Let's give him a stretch. We gave Will Crow an entire season last year. And let's be honest, he didn't earn it. He didn't earn it. He didn't. If we had other options, he would not have been up here all year. And
No,
that's the bottom line. That's what I'm hoping to see change in 2022 is when somebody is showing you that they don't deserve it, they don't get it. And that's what I think
yeah,
is going to change.
yeah. You got guys that have earned it, and they have a right to be there in some capacity, is what you're looking for.
Yes. So, and I think moving forward, that's not too much to expect and not too much to ask. And unlike last year when we're going like, what are we doing with Kai Tom? What is he doing? We've got outfielders that are on the 40-man down in AAA. One of them can be ready. That's not
Sure.
something we could say last year. Well, we can do the same thing with rotation. It's not who's on the waiver wire. It's not who is willing to be traded for cash. It's, hey, let's give Contreras a shot. It's his turn. Hey, Cody Bolton, he looks healthy. He looks like the former top 10, prospect. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, or
There's,
Kranick
yeah,
takes another
Kranick.
step forward.
Yep.
So I mean, these are the incremental baby steps that they are taking and have to take. And I know people want things to be magically better and see these like
Right.
night and day differences.
Well, people want signings and that means something. But to me, the proof that the rebuild is starting to take hold is that I'm having conversations like this about
Yeah,
the real backing effect that they have with the starting rotation options. that's when I start to get excited, because I'm staring down the barrel at 10 or 11 guys I truly wouldn't be upset seeing get a shot. And that's exciting for me. And I think that is, to me, a mental turning of the corner.
Yeah, I mean, they're better options, and there's a number of them. You're hoping to insulate yourself from it once the inevitable injury or two or poor performance comes up, right? So
absolutely,
I think Pirate fans just need to look, if they're dreaming of running downstairs and seeing a big red bow on the Lexus outside and the snow falling down for Christmas, I'm thinking that might be help me out here, Gary, with a car that they could expect out there with a red bow on.
Yeah, it's definitely elf on the shelf territory there. It's
so
creepy and wrong and not going to happen. So
yeah, so I think we need to get away from that line of thinking.
Anyways, Jim, I think that's enough talk for this week about baseball that is and isn't here. So let's go.
But it was good. We got to chew on some actual baseball there, and
yeah, and I think we'll do more of that, because, like it or don't, a lot of this roster I think is relatively set. So I do think we're going to be able to go through and kind of talk about some of these different position battles. Even the outfield is really interesting if you think about it, because we've kind of decided that Travis Swaggerty is the top of the mountain there as far as the outfield prospects go, but he might not be. I really think we can talk about some of the options there to even potentially make it right out of spring.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That'll be some good stuff we can talk about next week. But for now, that's enough baseball talk for the week. And Jim, how do people get a hold of you, sir?
Yeah, it's for the city _412 or at Jim Stamm 22. You know me, Mr. Twitter. All Pittsburgh all the time. Lots of stuff going on right now. Steelers, Pirates, Pitt, and Penguins. And yeah, so hit me up, give me a follow. And I love just chatting with people. And don't forget, January 22nd at the North Shore Tavern, Pirates Fan Forum. We're going to be there live, and that's not going to be the last you've heard of that. So,
no, we're definitely going to bring it up multiple times, I'm sure. You can follow me on Twitter at GaryMO2007, and follow the show, Pirates Fan Forum, on Twitter. You can email the show, piratesfanforum@yahoo.com, and make sure you smash that subscribe button and like, and follow all of the shows on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. They're all very good, and we like being one big happy family. So we're going to support everybody equally. Go Steelers, go Pitt, go all that. We're really excited for Pitt to get their big bowl game, regardless of what Mr. Kenny decides. I support him 100% either way.
Kenny can do whatever he wants in the city of Pittsburgh right about now.
Absolutely. So without further ado, take it away, Ben.
Let's go Bucs!